Hello students, welcome to AKS IAS. In this video lecture, we will be discussing about Lokamanya Balagangadhar Tilak, who is one of the prominent nationalists. So, this article that we are discussing is based on the article titled Lokamanya Tilak, the father of Indian Renaissance, which was published in the Hindustan Times recently. Swaraj is my birthright, and I shall have it. This is the slogan that inculcated a political conscience among the Indians regarding self rule. The slogan was given by Lokamanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Lokamanya means the man who is accepted by the people. So, this was the title given by the followers of Tilak in his reverence. Given his contribution, Tilak can be hailed as the first mass leader of the Indian national movement. Mahatma Gandhi had called him the maker of modern India. The British colonial authorities called him the father of Indian unrest. So these various names given, various titles given to Tilak testifies his legacy and contribution to Indian society and freedom struggle. As a philosopher politician, his contribution is immense as he is said to be the pioneer of the ideas of Swaraj and Swadeshi, and he was the first or one of the first nationalists to use culture, education, and media for the furtherance of Indian national movement. Now let us look into the broad contributions of Balagangadhar Tilak. Number one is igniting patriotism. The ruthless suppression of the revolt of 1857 by the British and its aftermath had created disillusionment and darkness regarding the self rule that continued for many decades. This is when Tilak began to quicken the growth of nationalist consciousness with the advent of 20th century. Tilak ignited patriotic consciousness among the masses during one of the most difficult periods in the freedom struggle. Then is the phase of switching to extremism. The founding of Indian National Congress in the year 1885 was aided by the British under the narrative of safety valve theory. As a follow up to that, the voice of INS was weak and subdued. Early leadership of the INC, mostly led by what we call as moderates, was mainly focused on mendicancy to the British authorities so as to gain self rule. So they depended on three principles or three P's, namely prayer, petition, and protest. However, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, who was disillusionist by this political mendicancy of the early nationalists or the moderates, what we call as, he, along with Lala Lajpat Rai and Bipin Chandra Pal, started the extremist phase in the INC. So they focused mainly on mass mobilization. They believed that if India had to achieve freedom in its true sense, they have to mobilize the masses, create awareness among them, and create a sense of participation among the masses in the Indian national movement so as to pressurize the British authorities to grant self rule to India. Next is the Trisutri program or the 3 point program for national awakening. What are these? Number one is Swaraj, Swadeshi, and nationalist education based on vernacular language. So, this is the Trisutri program given by Tilak so as to further the national awakening or nationalist consciousness among the masses. This helped the realization of self pride and activism in a nation that was culturally suppressed by the British under the narrative of white man's burden. You know what is a white man's burden? It is a narrative adopted by British so as to rule and establish a moral hegemony over the Indian people. They said that It was their moral responsibility that they had come to India to rule over them, as the Indian people were socially, culturally, and economically backward. And thus, these white men had the burden or the responsibility on their shoulders to further the Indian socio-economic culture. So, for the cultivation of an enlightened mind, he used the media in the form of two newspapers. What are they? Kesari and Maratha. And the national education was cultivated through Deccan Education Society, an institution which was established by Tilak. Next, we will discuss about Tilak's contribution during the Swadeshi movement. Tilak started the Swadeshi movement in the year 1905, which was not just about boycotting British goods, but his larger objective was promoting indigenous entrepreneurship, that is the Swadeshi, that is indigenous development of industries, an ethos of entrepreneurship, and self reliance. Tilak wanted to promote manufacturing in India. To that end, Tilak started collecting funds for the corpus known as Paisa Fund. This can be termed as a reminiscent of the Make in India program, which is being carried out by the present day government. Next is the broader vision of Swaraj. For Tilak, Swaraj or home rule meant the rule of and the rule for the common people of India. Swaraj meant the rule for and the rule of the common people of India. That is a rule by the people of India. However, he also had a blueprint of an independent India in mind. So his idea or philosophy of Swaraj was useful both in the pre-independence period so as to inculcate the spirit of national awakening, as well as for the post-independent period, so that India develops as a self-reliant socio-economic paradigm, and for the overall development of Indian nation. For him, Swaraj was also linked to Swabhasha and Swabhusha, that is the mother tongue and indigenous attire. Perhaps he was the first national leader who envisioned the formation of linguistic states. Okay. Next, laying the foundation for Gandhian way of mass movement. Tilak's two arrests by the British in the year 1897 and 1908 galvanized the workers, peasants, professionals, and youth in an unprecedented manner of nationalist awakening. His formula for preparing the ground for political activism through culture, education, and media was so powerful that later on Mahatma Gandhi and Baba Saheb Ambedkar, as well as other prominent national leaders, adopted his path. So, this combination of culture, education, and media, this was the comprehensive combination which Tilak, through his mass mobilization phase of Indian national movement, had used them as the tools for political awakening. Also, he prepared a fertile ground for Swaraj through his home rule movement. Next is cultural revivalism. Tilak's campaign against the British colonial rule was also anchored on the reclaiming of Indian heritage and culture. In the year 1896, he famously initiated the Sarvajanik Ganesh Visarjan Utsav in Bombay, in which the masses of people came out to worship and then immerse idols of Ganesha in the sea. So this act of Tilak, okay, of Ganesh Visarjan Utsav, was more the idea behind this was a kind of community feeling among the people. These symbols of cultural prominence, such as the Ganesha, the Hindu idols, were utilized so as to rally the people around a common cause and create a sense of common brotherhood among them. This religious drive served the political purpose of mass mobilization. Though it is seen as a communal move by many historians, his writings reflected that his call for public celebration of these festivals was not meant to rouse sentiments against any other community, but it is only to enable mass mobilization and participation as a community so that there is socio political and cultural awakening among the Indian masses. Tilak also said that the sole purpose of these kind of activities was cultural self assertion of his people who were then living the yoke of foreign rule. The author concludes by saying that today, when we talk about Atmanirbhar Bharat, the legacy of Tilak is carried forward, reviving the spirit of economic nationalism for indigenously manufactured goods and striving for social integration through the culture. That is, Ek Bharat, Shresht Bharat, are the features of Tilak's strategy, and they continue to be relevant even today as we observe the 100th death anniversary of Lokamanya Balagangadhar Tilak. So now let us try to look at a question which could be a potential question for your mains examination. Please note this question. Discuss the relevance of the ideas of Balagangadhar Tilak in the present times. So these kind of questions are not only important for your GS paper 1 of the mains exam, but also this could be useful for your ethics paper as well. So please try to write an answer for this question depending on the discussion that we had about Bal Gangadhar Tilak, his philosophy, his ideology, and his contribution to the Indian national movement as well as Indian socio-economic cultural paradigm. Thank you. Have a good day.